Hey there everybody, Scott here from the TWBF. Just wanted to say hello and to say thank you again to the EFTA for giving the Taiwan Wild Bird Federation this amazing opportunity to just take part again in this year's World Migratory Bird Day event, because we truly do also believe that birds connect our world. And on that note, please enjoy this presentation about the citizen science projects that are taking place for birds in Taiwan. A big hello there from Taiwan. My name is Scott Persner, and I'm the Director of International Affairs for the Taiwan Wild Bird Federation, Taiwan's largest bird conservation organization. Today, I'm going to talk with you about citizen science projects for birds in Taiwan. But before we begin, we just want to say a big thank you to the EFTA for inviting us to take part in this special World Migratory Bird Day event. We here in Taiwan really believe that birds do connect our world. Now, let's have a look at how we study them here in Taiwan. Now, a brief introduction to the TWBF first. Founded in 1988, the TWBF is actually Taiwan's largest bird conservation organization. Its purpose is bird watching, research, and the conservation of wild birds and their habitats. But in fact, we are not just one group, but many. In fact, the TWBF is the umbrella organization for 21 different conservation groups throughout Taiwan proper and its outlying islands. All of these groups are bird or ecology related, and many of them have different kinds of activities that people can engage in. So here, you can actually see the logos for all of the TWBF's partner associations, spread out from Taiwan to Matsu to Jinmen and everywhere in between. These groups are heavily involved with the community and work really hard in order to go and promote conservation of ecology, bird species, their habitats. And so many of them are also, in some way, shape, or form, also engaged in doing citizen science projects. Now on this slide, you can actually see a list of Taiwan citizen science projects for birds, and there are quite a few, because some of the oldest and most well-developed citizen science projects were actually done for birds in Taiwan. Now, we're not going to go over all of them, but we will go over some of them. Just to make a couple quick mentions though, if you look at the Lapway Survey Yunlin, that's actually done by our partner, the Wild Bird Society of Yunlin, which starting in 2009, they started work with academics and the local community in order to do surveys of the numerous northern lapwings, which would actually forage in the peanut farms there. And it's thought now that actually Yunlin might be one of the northern lapwing hotspots for wintering. And under that you have the Jacana Survey Tainan, which is done by the Pheasant Tail Jacana Conservation Park under our partner association, the Wild Bird Society of Tainan. And actually the Pheasant Tail Jacana story in Taiwan is actually one of conservation success, because as late as in the late 1990s, the pheasant-tailed jacana population in Taiwan was just around 50 or below 50. However, through the work of the park and Wild Bird Society of Tainan, they worked very diligently with the local community to promote the cultivation of water chestnuts, which is actually very important for breeding for pheasant-tailed jacanas. And during the last Jacana Survey Tainan, which was done with the local community, they found that the number of pheasant-tailed jacanas had gone up to 1,141. So a very big success. And so we hope that they can continue to work with the community and that this wonderful work will go forward into the future. So now though, let's go ahead and look at some of the citizen science projects that we're going to discuss more in depth today. To give you an idea of the composition of the birds of Taiwan, we've had this chart here, and in fact Taiwan sees around 674 species of bird annually. However, there are new records of birds visiting Taiwan each year. In any event, they could be broken up into these major groups of resident, summer visitor, winter visitor, transient, seabird, and vagrant. For many of our citizen science projects, they're looking at either the breeding birds or the wintering birds. So in this top portion here, you could see the Breeding Bird Survey Taiwan and the Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship Taiwan, or MAPS. So both of those are engaged with going and monitoring the breeding birds of Taiwan. Whereas if you look at the bottom there, the Taiwan New Year bird count, it's more involved with winter visitors and looking at the wintering avifauna. However, all of the bird species that can occur in Taiwan are monitored by using Ebird Taiwan, which is a database app that we'll be able to discuss a little bit later. So just to give you an idea before we continue, wanted to show you this. Now the first one we're going to look at is the Breeding Bird Survey Taiwan, which was established in 2009. When it was established, it was done as a joint partnership between the TWBF, the Institute of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology for National Taiwan University, and the Taiwan Endemic Species Research Institute. Now, what makes it so special is that it's the first systematic nationwide CS project in Taiwan, as well as one of the first BBSs for the entire Asia-Pacific region. And it was done because scientists and researchers, they wanted to better understand the current situation for breeding birds on the ground. And so the way that this was done is that volunteers were asked to go ahead and do point counts. Now I'm going to explain a little bit more about the way that the BBS was done. So basically, BBS takes place from March until June, and there are surveys done in the mornings at specifically chosen survey sites. Now the survey sites all measure 1 square kilometer, and the sites are visited twice per breeding season. At each site, there are 6 to 10 survey points chosen, and at each point, the volunteers will conduct a 6-minute stop time point count within a 100-meter radius of the point. Now, when it was first done in 2009, there were about 160 species which were investigated. Now, there are over 230. There are to date 231 species, and on average, about 104,160 individuals which are evaluated. And currently you have 257 sampling sites, and you could actually see on the map there to the right of the words, those red dots, those are actually the survey points. And each year we have about 228 participants who will go ahead and help us to do these surveys. Now, to date, there have been about 490 surveys done at 4,167 points. Okay, so this sounds very, very scientific, and we understand that. So actually, in order to go ahead and prepare the volunteers to take part in the BBS, there are about 2 to 3 training courses offered every year. And then the other aspect of this is that in order to let everybody know about what the BBS results have been, every year there is an annual report published, and currently they're in Chinese, but we are trying to work towards making them English as well. And not only that, but all the data that is collected from the BBS is open data. So it's put on the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, which is an international organization that focuses on making biodiversity data available to the public. So actually, if you'd like to go ahead and see the BBS data for yourself from over the years, you can actually go to the GBIF and have a look. And so actually something that's really interesting about the BBS is that due to this work, the data collected allowed researchers to actually assess population trends for 97 different species in Taiwan, including 19 which were found to have experienced a population increase, and 29 which experienced population decline since the survey began. So it's very important for being able to monitor the situation for these breeding birds. Okay, so whereas the Breeding Bird Survey Taiwan, BBS Taiwan, was focused on all breeding birds, MAPS, or the Monitoring for Avian Productivity and Survivorship Taiwan, focus more on common breeding birds that you see in Taiwan. And so it's a much more skills-based CS project. So training was provided by the Taiwan Endemic Species Research Institute to volunteers who were willing to go ahead and take up the task of working with this program. And so in MAPS, the common breeding birds were banded, aged, and sexed, so that way researchers and scientists could go ahead and get a better idea about the population structure and dynamics of these common birds. So these activities would take place at 7 banding stations, which were located at different elevations throughout Taiwan. And in total, over 39,790 hours of open net time has been recorded. And more amazing is that volunteers have spent over 28,540 hours banding birds. You could actually go ahead and see in the picture there, that middle picture, it's one of the fairy pittas. So cute. And in total, 11,993 individuals from 120 different bird species have actually been recorded, thanks to the work of these volunteers taking part in maps. And so this offers researchers and scientists and conservationists a very good look at what is going on for the common breeding bird population in Taiwan, because the goal here is to try and keep common birds common and to better understand the dynamics and the needs, so that way conservation initiatives can go ahead and help them into the future. Now, we've just talked about the breeding birds and citizen science projects for breeding birds. Now we're going to look at wintering birds. I'd like to introduce you to the Taiwan New Year bird count. Now, the Taiwan New Year bird count was established in 2013, and it was launched by the TWBF and two of our partner associations, the Wild Bird Society of Taipei and the Kaohsiung Wild Bird Society, as well as the Endemic Species Research Institute of Taiwan. Now, for the NYBC, I'm going to give you a little bit of history first. I'm not sure, but I think you may have all heard of the Christmas bird count before, right? Well, the Christmas bird count is actually the inspiration for the New Year's bird count. So I know that you might be wondering, why don't you go ahead and call it the Christmas bird count? Well, because Christmas is not as big of a holiday in Taiwan. So actually, the New Year bird count was a holiday that was nearby Christmas that we could go ahead and use the name of for raising awareness about it. And so actually, you can go ahead and see this bottom section here, which is in Chinese, and it's actually discussing doing the New Year's bird count, because there was a similar event to our current new NYBC that took place between 1973 and 1984. And even though it was called the NYBC, if you see there, it actually took place on Christmas Day. However, NYBC has changed since that previous survey. Now, the reason why they decided to start up the NYBC again is because in the past there was no nationwide monitoring scheme for migratory water birds. And Taiwan is actually one of the most important stopover and wintering sites for thousands of migratory water birds along the East Asian Australasian Flyway. So, NYBC was launched in order to monitor the status of the wintering birds of Taiwan and Taiwan's outlying islands, especially water bird species. So, the Christmas bird count takes place over the course of 24 hours, and the NYBC takes place over the course of around 23 to 24 days, using early January, January 1st as the midpoint. Now, during the NYBC, volunteers, usually in groups, choose one 6-hour period to count the birds within a circle sample area, which has a radius of 3 kilometers. And so for the volunteer groups, if you are very, very good at birding, if you know a lot of the birds and the sounds, then you can go ahead and do one of the surveys on your own. However, usually groups are of 3 people, where you have somebody who's very knowledgeable at birding, then a person who's good with helping them to navigate, and then other volunteers from the community who will go ahead and take part in the survey as well. Because not only is the point of the NYBC to monitor birds, but it's also to go ahead and promote biodiversity and also to just encourage having fun with nature, right? So the methods that are used are the line transect, counting flocks, and area searches. And actually, if you look here on the upper right, you could see a number of the sites which were used for NYBC in the past. And the one in the bottom there is actually just explaining how the NYBC works. Now, every year for the NYBC, they choose a different mascot. So actually, you could kind of see at the bottom here these different birds. So in 2014, it was kind of a whimbrel. And then in 2015, you have the green-winged teal. Then in 2016, it was Saunders's gull. Then in 2017, the northern lapwing. 2018, the ruddy turnstone. And 2019, the pied avocet. In 2020, there were actually 5 different bird species that were the mascots, because they wanted to talk about the importance of agricultural landscapes, especially paddy fields, for migratory water birds, and those included like the painted snipe, the common snipe, the long-toed stint. So don't worry though, because we don't make any of the birds actually wear scarves. That's just for the picture. And actually here you can go ahead and see what one of the survey sites looks like. So this entire area is the Guandu count site. And so all of the little pinpoints are the areas which have to have surveys done. And so some of them you could see are very, very straight, but some of them are actually kind of long and squiggly, like the one at the top next to the word site. And the area that's highlighted in the middle there is the Guandu Nature Park, which is actually managed by the Wild Bird Society of Taipei, one of our partner associations. And that spot is actually also an IBA, an important bird and biodiversity area. So over there you'll have many, many water birds which will actually spend time there wintering or stopping over the course of the winter months. And so this is just to give you an idea about what the survey sites look like for the NYBC. And so if you look here at these pictures, you have groups of people who will go out there with their binoculars, with their scopes, and they'll just do the surveys in order to see what the bird species are in the area, and the information will then get logged and then go into the report, which is later used. So actually for some whereas with the BBS, with maps, they were much more scientific and you needed to have maybe a bit more training, the NYBC is actually a much easier activity to be able to go ahead and take part in. And so there are actually a lot of volunteers who take part in the NYBC. Now here you can go ahead and see the total number of sites. Currently there are 174 NYBC sites. And so the areas that are a bit darker of a pink, those areas are areas that are in or next to an IBA. An IBA is an important bird and biodiversity area, which are areas that have met a certain international criteria, which means that they are important for bird species. And so the yellow there are those IBAs. And so you can go ahead and see all of our different count sites which are used for the NYBC, and the count sites actually comprise 13.4% of all of Taiwan's area. So it's good because it's comprehensive. And then another fun thing about the NYBC is that everybody can get involved. So if you have a look at this picture here, you could see all the different groups who have taken part. So older people, younger people, children, college groups, our bird associations, our partner associations, anybody can go ahead and take part in the NYBC. And so it creates a strong sense of bonding between members of the birding community, and also gives an opportunity for people who have never worked with bird study or anything like that before, a chance to go ahead and see for themselves what it's like. So there's a lot of interest, and actually it's a very fun activity that many people look forward to every year. Now here you can go ahead and see the NYBC by the numbers. So you could see that in 2014 there were only 122 sites, but now in 2020 there are over 176. The participant numbers fluctuate over time, depending on people's availability and things like that. But the bird species recorded, those have also gone up over time as well. So you could see for the 2014 NYBC, there were 292 species recorded, but by the 2020 NYBC there were over 350, and from those 350 species we had 323,579 individual birds recorded, which is actually quite amazing. So what happens to this data that's collected in the NYBC? Well, with the NYBC, it now has over 5 years worth of population trends for migratory water birds along the East Asia Australasian flyway, which is really very good and important because all parts of the flyway are necessary in order to better understand the situation facing migratory birds, especially migratory shorebirds. The EAF is the largest of the flyways, and there are over 48 different species of migratory bird in this flyway that are globally threatened. So it's important that everybody knows this data that we've collected about what the bird populations look like here in Taiwan. And so that is one of the reasons why all of the data that's collected during NYBC is made open. So this open data is put on one of our national databases as well as on GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, which I'd mentioned earlier. Also, the NYBC data is published in an annual report every year. Starting in 2019, we also have an English version of the report. 2020's report will also have an English version, and in the future we will continue to publish them both in English and Chinese. This data is also then shared with Wetlands International for their International Water Bird Census, creating a full view of what is the situation for migratory birds and wintering birds in Taiwan, in Asia, right? And so over here you could see these pictures of the number of areas which NYBC has done, and then species richness there, and then individual richness. So you could see that the coastal areas of Taiwan are extremely important when it comes to wintering avifauna. And then right next to that there you could see our reports which we'd written up over the years for the NYBC. And at the bottom you could see the trends which can be then, analyzed based off of the data collected from the NYBC. So now we're going to talk a bit about Ebird. So Ebird is actually the user-friendly real-time online checklist program launched by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and Audubon Society in 2002. It's the world's largest bird record database, and it's also the world's largest repository of completed bird checklists with almost 48 million checklists currently online. And these checklists have been made by almost 600,000 eBirders throughout the world. People particularly like eBird because it's used globally and is multilingual. You can have your personal birding data there. You can record a checklist or a sighting of a bird anytime via the app usage. It allows you to upload photos, sounds, and videos. You could share records with other people. You could even go birding with other people and then share the checklist of the birds which you'd counted together to that person's account. It provides bird news reports, so that way you can get updates on if a bird that you're interested in seeing is somewhere near you at the time. It has other functions that are amazing. Its information is regularly updated. It has a back-end management capability, and you can download materials from it. It's really revolutionized the way that birders manage their personal birding reports, and are an amazing tool for accessing real-time information on wild birds. Now, what does this have to do with us here at the TWBF? So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to Ebird Taiwan. Ebird Taiwan was established in 2015, and it's a collaboration between the Taiwan Wild Bird Federation and the Taiwan Endemic Species Research Institute. It is the traditional Chinese portal of eBird. This has actually attracted many birders in Taiwan managing their personal birding records and helped them to be able to share their checklists with the world. And trust me, Taiwanese birders love to share their checklists with the world. We are currently number 7 after the US, Canada, Australia, India, Spain, and the UK. It's that chart there in the bottom right hand corner. So over 446,300 checklists have been submitted, and anybody can go ahead and use eBird. So something else that's interesting about the eBird records is that it also has the TWBF bird database. Because in the past, before eBird was used, you had the TWBF bird database. So over 115,556 checklists have been uploaded from that database and moved to eBird so that people can actually see the history of bird sightings and checklists over the years. That's over 2 million records. So actually, if you look at the bottom there, you could see from 1972 until almost 2015, you could see the people's checklists there and the number of checklists. That spike that begins to go up in the mid-1990s, that's when the TWBF bird database was first established. And so everybody was using that until eBird. And so there's been a slow movement of individual birders to go from using the bird database to Ebird Taiwan. To go ahead and introduce new people to eBird, though, the TWBF has hosted a number of workshops for beginners. Now, I want to show you a little piece of Taiwan birding history. So here you could take a look at the Taiwan Bird Record Database interface. So before there was Ebird Taiwan, there was the Bird Record Database, and so even though it was started in the 90s, it was actually had sightings and checklists going all the way back to 1972. So for many, they said that this might be one of the oldest citizen science projects for recording bird data. And so once the bird record database was up and running, many birders in Taiwan, they would all come to the TWBF to have this information uploaded, because in the past there was just one computer and then eventually it became bigger and bigger. So you can go ahead and have a look at that here. It's a little piece of Taiwan citizen science and birding history. And so this is what it looked like when you wanted to upload a checklist. So you could see there in the top, you would just put the date and then the time. And so really it essentially is very similar to the eBird format, even though this is from the mid-1990s here. And it was very, very popular. There are still some older birders who do not want to use eBird Taiwan because they still like to use what they've known for many, many years. Another fun thing about eBird is that the eBird community goes ahead and hosts events. So actually this slide here is just showing you that in the fall of 2018 they went ahead and had an eBird event. So basically by submitting a checklist or submitting one of those to eBird, you were entered in, and so you could go ahead and win any number of prizes. This was to go ahead and encourage people to go ahead and use eBird, interact with other members of the eBird of the birding community, and to get more involved, and it was quite popular. And actually you could see here, well, in Chinese it talks about some of the prizes which you could go ahead and get. So certain things were, and the biggest prize really was a pair of nice binoculars. But eBird has taken off, and you could see Ebird Taiwan is also on Facebook. So here, to go ahead and also show you a little bit about the craziness of eBirding here in Taiwan, is this map here. So this is northern Taiwan, and actually if you look in the top left corner, you have the light-vented bulbul. Light-vented bulbul is a very common species in Taiwan. And so here, if you look at the top right, you see the observations. This is my colleague. They've gone ahead and observed a light-vented bulbul 598 times. And so they've also taken photos of it and done one audio of it. However, on eBird, there have been over 30,622 sightings of light-vented bulbul overall. And over here in northern Taiwan, you could see where all those sightings have taken place. So this actually goes ahead and is really good and important citizen science, because granted, it's amazing how many sightings there have been, but it also shows you where the bird itself is and where you should be able to find it. And you could then go ahead and use eBird data to go ahead and see trends or look for locations to learn about the science behind where birds are, where they're going, where they might be breeding, where they might be wintering. But as the light-vented bulbul is a resident, you should be able to see something like this to let you know that their population is still abundant. And so, as I mentioned earlier, for newcomers to eBird, we have Ebird Classes and practice sessions. This gives people who are interested the chance to go ahead and learn how eBird works, how to go ahead and interact with it, how to use it, and then those who are interested after the class, they can go and do their first eBird checklist. And so usually we will work with our partner associations to go ahead and set up these classes in order to teach local people how to go ahead and use eBird and the fun of bird watching. So we've had these courses in Taipei, Changhua, Tainan, Kaohsiung, Yilan, and Hualien. But we plan to go ahead and hold more sessions on how to use eBird and work and enjoy eBird in the future. So this chart here just shows how we've gone and tried to promote our citizen science projects and work with others to go ahead and learn more about the citizen science projects for birds which take place in Taiwan. So BBS, MAPS, NYBC, and eBird all have a website. They're also all on social media, generally Facebook, because Facebook has an 88% penetration rate in Taiwan, one of the highest in the world. And annual reports come out for BBS Maps and NYBC. Maps even has an annual meeting. As I've said before, though, Maps is a really skills-based citizen science project. And of course, for BBS Maps, NYBC, and Ebird, there are training workshops and also events for volunteers which are offered to take place. Now, this is the GBIF, which I had told you about earlier, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. And so I'm not sure if you could tell here where Taiwan is, but if you see North America very clearly, Europe very clearly, but then there's a little red dot north of Australia and south of Japan and Korea, and that little red dot is Taiwan, because Taiwan is a very, very, very big contributor to open data, especially the Biodiversity Information Facility, because we feel as though it's really important to share knowledge and to work together to go ahead and have a better understanding of biodiversity, which goes ahead and helps with future conservation. And just as Ebird Taiwan is the portal for Ebird, the overall website, this is the Taibith, which is the Taiwan Biodiversity Information Facility. So Taibith is the Taiwan portal for the for GBIF, and within it, it follows the rules and protocols of GBIF. So all the information which is on GBIF about Taiwan, you can also go ahead and access here on Taibith. And last but not least, we also have here in Taiwan the Taiwan Biodiversity Network. So whereas GBIF only uses certain sources for the information about biodiversity knowledge that they acquire, the Taibith is the same. However, the Taiwan Biodiversity Network, they use other sources for their databases, and so they're a bit more open. And so this is a much more local one, and it's monitored by the Taiwan Endemic Species Research Institute. So if you have interest in learning more about the citizen science, if you have interest in learning more about the species and biodiversity of Taiwan, you can go ahead and use either Taibith or the Taiwan Biodiversity Network. So that was an introduction to the citizen science projects for birds in Taiwan. I hope that you've enjoyed it and that you were able to learn about this fun topic, and that if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us here at the TWBF. We are more than happy to go ahead and talk with you about citizen science or anything bird related if you're interested. So we'd just like to go ahead and say happy World Migratory Bird Day, and we're happy to note that birds really do connect our world. Thank you again. Have a good day. Bye.